It might be a very weird and highly controversial thing to say, but I'm actually very excited and optimistic about the future of our industry, specifically about altcoins. And there is currently this general consensus that altcoins are not going to make it, altcoins are dead. And that's just the general kind of feeling and sentiment in the market right now. And I've said this in the last video as well, there's definitely an oversupply of coins. There's definitely a lot of old baggage, old dead weight that is also true for many coins in Cosmos. But in a mid-long run, I think that we're just witnessing the creation of a new industry, and that altcoins and the whole crypto Web3 sector is going to massively grow and scale over the next years, maybe decades. And there's many things that I've personally done wrong in this industry as an investor, as an entrepreneur, right? I think my biggest weakness is that I'm very naive. I believe a lot what people have told me, and I've been working on this, and I'm working on this continuously. But on the flip side, I think I've really learned to be patient, to remain patient, and to not take quick decisions, to not take emotional decisions at this point. But that's just my personal view on things. And I think in the end of the day, you have to be patient. You have to have conviction. You have to have a thesis, no matter what that will be, right? If that's around privacy, if that's around Solana, if that's around Cosmos, if that's around sovereignty, interoperability, no matter what it is, or if it's only about Bitcoin, right? It's all fair enough. But I think you got to have a thesis, you got to have commitment, and you got to be patient. I think that's all it takes in this game. But now, enough of the philosophical long-term talk. If we look into where we are right now, of course, there are reasons as to why people say altcoins are dead. And in my view, the main reason here is that retail is not coming into crypto and has exited crypto over the past years. And secondly, institutions are keeping the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum down, right? They have pumped it up, and they're also keeping it down over the past couple of weeks and months. And you can see that here also by simply looking at ETF flows movements, right? Billions have poured out of the ETFs in the recent weeks. We're now seeing a few green days here, but that's all tiny amounts, 21 million, 71 million for Bitcoin. And if we look at Ethereum, you see a very similar picture actually here, where hundreds of millions in outflows for an asset that is a tenth the size of Bitcoin. So that definitely affected price the same way it did affect early in the year when it went up, because that's when the ETF launched and when the ETF had more inflows. You can also see here in July of this year that there were a lot of inflows, a lot of green here for the Ethereum ETF. Now, if we look at historic price movement, the month of November, whenever we have seen a red month, and note that today is also the monthly candle close, 30th of November, tomorrow's December. So we're seeing the monthly close for November, and it looks like we're going to see a highly red month for Bitcoin. And whenever we saw a red month for Bitcoin, that also meant a red November, that also meant red December, at least for Bitcoin. If we look at Ethereum, we're also seeing a very similar picture here, and we're now currently down 22% for November projected. There's still a few hours left, but yeah, expect major volatility. Also because in December, we're going to have the next Fed meeting. In fact, on December 9 and 10, I think is the next Fed meeting. And then on December 10th, Jerome Powell will come back to the mic. He hasn't been on the mic in November, I think last time in early October. And yeah, now the big question is the Fed going to cut rates, which seems highly likely. We talked about this in the last video. But yeah, we're going to talk about this in a second as well. Also, Coinbase reporting that US buying pressure is back. The Coinbase Bitcoin Premium Index, which is basically a soft indicator to show US demand for Bitcoin, apparently has flipped bullish and green again. So there's a slight premium on Coinbase, which apparently means that US investors are coming back. Nick, CEO at Coinbase, also saying, quantitative tightening is ending tomorrow. The TJ is slowly being drained. Rate cut probabilities are currently at 86%. And there was a massive volatility throughout November. It went down to as low as, I think, 35%. Now we're back at 86%. And again, we're going to see and hear whether they are going to cut rates on December 10th, which is 10 days away, 11 days away where we are. Then changes to the SLR ratio coming next year. And that the bottom line is 2026 could surprise to the upside. Don't fade it. And that goes back to what I said in the initial statement. It really takes a lot of patience and a lot of suffering also to have that level of patience, to have that level of endurance in this game, because it can be brutal. And of course, right now, if you're on Twitter, a lot of the kind of doomsday scenarios, a lot of the people that are very bearish on altcoins specifically, right? They're getting all the engagement right now. And that's all fair enough, right? There's currently a million reasons to actually be bearish and to also be bearish on certain valuations, right? Celestia is getting a lot of FUD right now, and many other coins, projects, teams that have recently launched, right? Monad, the latest example that just launched a few days ago, and also highly volatile. And people are calling things in either direction. But that's all noise in my view. That's all noise. And I've always considered that stuff being noise. Here in this channel, I am an undercover perma bull on this industry, on my conviction, my thesis, right? And here I'm all in on the sovereign and interoperability thesis that Cosmos has pioneered, and that will also reflect here on the channel more and more in the coming weeks. Looking at some price movements, everything that I just said does not look at all reflected on the charts right now, right? We're seeing everything down bad massively. TIA 65 cents. I would have never thought it would go below $1, let alone below 70 cents. I mean, this is way below the investors got in their Series A, I think was it, at $1. And then they raised another round. dYdX 24 cents, Akash around 50 cents. Atown came down to 81 cents. This had also major volatility when 𝗂𝗂𝘀 pumped up the price to $17 not too long ago, around 2 months ago or something. Now back at 81 cents. Mantra 8 cents. Osmosis 7.5 cents. Babylon below 2 cents. So altcoins seem and look to be bleeding out, right? That's a fact. And if you look at the price charts of any of these coins, then that's what it looks like, right? On the flip side, if you look at charts like Zcash, for example, which we can pull up in a second here, then you can see that Zcash has been down forever. It's been down, basically dead, right, for a very long time. And this coin has been around since 2016 or even before that, right? But it's just got tracked here on CoinGecko. So yeah, it had its all-time highs here 9 years ago, $3,200, if that's correct. I'm not sure, but went again to $700-800 here, $900, January 2018, and since then has never seen an all-time high ever again, right? In 7 years, and this has been flat dead. 3 years down, only like nothing. No one cared. Only a few people that really believed in its privacy theme. And then suddenly in September, October, it started running from $50 to now $450. It went as high as 700, I think, above 700 in the past couple of weeks. But look at this. It started running less than 3 months ago, out of absolutely nowhere. And that's the thing with altcoins, right? You can never call debt upon altcoins. Of course, if the team has entirely abandoned, if there's no narrative, no development, no community, no one believing in it, then yeah, there are many altcoins that are dead. But I think you cannot generalize and apply that to every single altcoin under the sun, right? Especially coins that have still active development, that still have a core base of token holders, or that have recently launched, right? Like Celestia, for example, Say Network, for example. Those coins are all relatively new on the market. But yeah, even Celestia, right? They have now announced that they're letting a few people go. So a few people have announced that they're leaving. NetNet, for example, Bora, also their head of DevRel, I think. So I think they have let a couple of people go, probably to kind of extend a runway, to improve internal finances, or just because they have a new roadmap and they want to restructure a team. I don't know. But what I know is that they still have a six-year runway, generally speaking, and $100 million plus treasury, and still a $650 million valuation, or $700 million even. dYdX still well-funded, still has a very active team. Same for Akash network. So you kind of have to factor a lot of things in. And sure, only because the team is still there and they have funding also doesn't mean that they're going to succeed and pull a Zcash move. But I think you probably, hopefully understand my point, which is that right now, because the prices have been going down, it's very easy to call death upon all altcoins collectively. But that is establishing the mindset that, this applies to all coins and they will never recover. This is it. It's all bullshit. And that's it, right? And people lose interest. They exit. They sell all their bags at a big loss, and they just leave, right? And I can tell you from my personal experience, we had a very similar scenario in 2019, 2020, right? Where the whole industry was at risk, much bigger than it is currently. And that was exactly where I did the opposite. And I went all in, right? And I went all in. Every single dollar that I had back then, I was doing Amazon FBA, I was doing e-commerce stuff. So every single dollar, every single cent I put into crypto right away, Robert Kiyosaki style, right? The moment it hits your, the salary hits your account, you put it into investments, right? And I put it into crypto all in back then. And it turned out nicely. So I think right now we're seeing a similar opportunity, a similar scenario, where we're seeing this generational opportunity that can make a lot of people rich. And once altcoins start running again 2x, 3x, that's then where retail will come back in again. And then you'll also see some of these voices on Twitter right now that are calling death upon everything. They will then flip the script and they will say, look, I was always there. I was always underneath. I was still bullish, you know, and they will be the ones that will still try to turn it around. But yeah, you got to take note also on who is just playing the narrative game and is bullish when things are well and bearish when things are not well. Because there's also a lot of hypocrisy in the space, especially on Twitter, right? It's all about engagement. It's all about getting 𝗂𝗏𝗃 points. It's all about getting impressions for Twitter payouts, which is all fair enough, right? I mean, that's just how the game is, but you got to know the game, and also you got to know the players of the game. Now, we talked about it last week as well. The Cosmos Hub had a proposal to basically migrate Stargaze, which is what people consider the last remaining on-chain culture project in Cosmos, with their NFTs, 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃. Omis were minted there. The Celestine sloth was minted there. So they wanted to migrate everything to the Cosmos Hub, which basically evaporates the utility for the Stars token. So they basically shut down the chain, migrate all on the hub. And that migration proposal has now passed. So this will happen. Congratulations to the Stars team. They're getting up to $1.5 million in funding to do this migration. And this is funded from the Cosmos Hub community pool. So yeah, this secures their runway, secures their migration, and brings the Culture Hub and the top application in Cosmos inarguably to the Cosmos Hub. So that's good to see. We also voted yes on this proposal with 𝗂𝗂𝘁𝗏𝗃, because we also think that while Cosmos Labs is going a strong direction towards institutions, banks, and basically selling the Cosmos stack to those large organizations, we also still support the on-chain builders, the dreamers, the creatives, the collectors, and just the culture of Cosmos, right? And that's also why I really wanted to make sure at Cosmos in Croatia that we have a Bad Kids panel with Joe, who is there, Martinez, Zerk from Mad Scientist, right? And just to kind of maintain that, right? As crypto and Cosmos is going more institutional, we don't want to entirely cut all ties to the on-chain communities and on-chain, and also the teams that have made Cosmos big in the first place, right? And our Stargaze team is definitely one of them that has also managed with their collection to kind of branch out. So congratulations here. I don't have very hard opinions and thoughts here. I also understand there's, controversial voices here. Then finally, we also have Tether publishing their asset breakdown, which shows that they actually hold around $13 billion in precious metals and around $9.8 billion in Bitcoin. Arthur Hayes calls this highly risky. He said that a roughly 30% decline would basically make them insolvent, so that poses systemic risk on their company, on the whole market, of course. Tether is still by far the largest asset or stablecoin issuer in crypto. There have been many wild speculations and critics around Tether over the years, which I also done a couple of videos about in the recent years. But then I also saw another post basically clarifying that they still have other assets. They're highly profitable. They also have equity that they could liquidate in case of any catastrophic market movements or whatever. So they still have security measures in place. But yeah, that's just that. Always a thing to keep an eye on is Tether. Of course, now we have a lot of other stablecoin issuers, but Tether is still king by far. And yeah, plays a major role also in the on-chain liquidity in crypto, which then affects also altcoin markets and everything that's attached to it, right? And Arthur's also saying that Tether is basically betting that the Fed will cut interest rates, which will then crush the interest income of Tether. But yeah, we'll see how that all evolves. Definitely something to keep an eye on alongside December 10th, alongside tonight's monthly close, and many other things. As for Cosmos, I think in the background, the Cosmos Labs team is definitely cooking on many ends. So hopefully we're going to see some announcements coming out soon. Definitely here on the channel, we have a couple of announcements, things that we've been working on over the past few weeks about reintroducing or introducing new formats that are specific to certain verticals, right? So the same way how for customers, we have this track system. We also want to apply this to the channel basically to have dedicated shows and various video series. Remember splitting Atom, for example, but apply that to different verticals around tokenization, around AI, around privacy, around Cosmos, maybe also around robotics, which I think is also a very interesting field. And that's how we are going to come out in the next few weeks, maybe early next year here on the channel. Now, that's all for today. Expect a lot more content here. Like and subscribe, and I hope to see you very soon here on 𝗂𝗃𝗃𝗃. Until then, stay safe and be good.